COVID-19 hit us all hard. We've been beaten up, but humanity is still on its feet. We're gathering our strength. We're ready to hit back. We've got vaccines now, and UNICEF is helping deliver them to the world. Because getting vaccines into arms is the way we all come back. Get children back in school. Get infants nourished and healthy again. Return their stolen lives and restart their dreams. UNICEF is proud to have been entrusted with helping deliver COVID-19 vaccines to more than 180 countries equitably. UNICEF has been preparing for this moment for 75 years, building the supply chains, the networks, the relationships. Let's make it happen. By air, by boat, by drone, on foot, on bikes, on donkeys. 2 billion doses in 2021. UNICEF won't stop until the job is done.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome. Thank you so very much for joining us today. My name is Renee Cutting, and I am UNICEF USA's Chief Philanthropy Officer. I'm here joined by my wonderful colleague, Alex Uzarovich, who is our Manager of Global Cause Partnerships, who will moderate the briefing and facilitate our questions and answers. Before jumping in, I'd like to start by officially introducing myself. I recently joined the UNICEF USA team early this spring, and I feel beyond blessed by being granted this opportunity to serve as its Chief Philanthropy Officer, especially at this critical moment in our world. Over the past several months, I really feel like I've shared with many of our supporters and colleagues that UNICEF is truly a full circle moment and really the confluence of my personal and professional experiences. I'm originally from Barbados, and I migrated to California at the age of 12. I grew up in South Central LA, and it was because of my education, my family's ability to seek out opportunities, and more importantly, my family's faith that allowed me to be able to pursue a career, go to wonderful universities, and ultimately pursue a master's degree in education at Harvard University. And it was there that cemented my passion to pursue a career as a teacher and eventually a career in philanthropy to serve underserved children and communities. I've worked at some of the leading institutions, most notably at Sloan Kettering, Mount Sinai, and most notably my prior role prior to joining the UUSA team, I was the Chief Development Officer at the NAACP Legal Defense Fund. And again, I do feel it is because of my personal journeys, my values to make a difference and to make a transformative change in our world, which has been guided by my faith. That was really rooted growing up as a child in Barbados on being, a part of the Episcopalian faith. We all come from different walks of life. We all come from different faiths, and I am beyond thrilled that we have this opportunity to gather here today. I want to thank each and every one of you for all joining us and being a part of this historic campaign. Thank you for your support and commitment for ending this pandemic. And for that, we are incredibly grateful because we know that your collaboration will get us closer to getting everyone vaccinated. UNICEF and UNICEF's work wouldn't be possible without strong partnerships like yours. We are united by our shared values and our shared mission to lift up children around the world, to enable their access to resources they need most to survive and to thrive. Why are we here today? As you know, we're in the midst of the largest vaccination effort in history. We have made enormous strides in 2021, and as you'll hear shortly from Shweta, with over 313 million COVID-19 doses delivered. We would not be here without your generous support. And faith-based partners have heeded the global call and joined us in this particular effort. I want to first thank especially our Latter-day Saints charities for their tremendous leadership by providing an early and flexible 20 million contribution to Unicef, which enable ACT-A programs to expand quickly at a pivotal moment. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I also would like to extend our appreciation to the Islamic Food and Nutrition Council of America for making a $3 million commitment earlier this year, which really helped UNICEF to build momentum. And thank you to our current partners in the Interfaith Movement, our Cathedral of the Rockies, OLAM, United Methodist Global Missions, Muslim American Leadership Alliance, the Buddhist Jew Chi Foundation, and Mennonite World Conference. Thank you so very much for continuing to mobilize our funds. Today, we have the opportunity to reflect on this generous support and progress, but also to look at the present and future, assess where we are and what we're collectively can do to make sure that the world is vaccinated, because no one is safe until everyone is safe. The interfaith movement to end the pandemic is a prime example of how our coming together can have an impact, spearheaded by the goodwill of Cathedral of the Rockies, mobilizing the collective resources and voices of a diverse range of faith communities in the US, and implemented by UNICEF, which has the reach and experience on the ground to get the job done. The movement is only a continuation of UNICEF's long history of partnering with religious communities of all faiths on a wide range of issues that affect children. Faith-based organizations like UNICEF understand the importance of serving the most vulnerable populations. So, without further ado, I'd like to extend and hand it over to Shweta, UNICEF's Global Partnerships Specialist, who is joining us from Switzerland, who will give us an in-depth look about ACT-A and COVAX. Shweta, over to you. And again, welcome everyone.
Thank you, Renée. And hello, everybody. I think sorry, my video wasn't, I think, visible. I was struggling with it. Hello, everybody, and thanks for having me here. As you all are aware, UNICEF is playing a key role in the race to end COVID-19. And as Renée rightly mentioned, no one is safe until everyone is safe. And that is the motto that UNICEF Executive Director is leading with, and we are all supporting her on it. Tedros, very rightly, Director General of WHO, said that we are in the race of our lives, and it's not a fair race. And most countries are very late to the starting line. As the world faces the fourth wave of COVID-19 infections for now, there are 4.6 million lives lost and over 223 million people infected. We are looking in this graph for that black line, which is deaths, to begin to stabilize and drop. That is what we are looking at. We are seeing that people can still catch COVID when vaccinated, but in countries with high vaccination rates, we are seeing vaccines are doing exactly what they were designed to do, which is keep people out of hospitals and to prevent people from dying. Now we need to help the world catch up to those well-vaccinated regions. Next slide, please. So you can see there are two-track economy recovery due to divergence in pandemic response. There are countries that have recovered more, that have received at least one vaccine dose, and their economy status and the way they are recovering from their economical backdrop is much different to the countries where the vaccination status is even lower than 1% or 2% in many of the African regions. So we are working towards bringing all together to the speed so that the world can together be able to combat the pandemic and come out of it. Next slide, please. So this is the COVAX ambition, fastest ever global rollout of a vaccine. This graph shows you how in the recent history of vaccine rollouts, it normally takes years for vaccines to be introduced across the world. Via COVAX, we are trying to deploy the vaccine globally in a year. Yes, but now it's not been what the targets we began with in a year, we've not been able to achieve all of them by now, but we still strive to work towards it with speed and efficiency. So really the entire COVAX operation is unprecedented. The scope of the multilateral collaboration by stakeholders via the COVAX facility, there are now 194 countries participating in it, from the timeline of vaccine development and scale up of manufacturing, where we are reducing timelines by years, to the preparation work on transport and logistics, including country readiness to secure supply chains, to successfully deploy the products, and the work we are doing to ensure availability of supporting products for vaccine delivery in countries. This includes syringes and safety boxes as well. As a result, this could be one of the fastest scientific and manufacturing leaps in history. Next slide, please. So I will now specifically take you through the ACT-A, COVAX, the accelerator tools towards ending the pandemic, how that has been built up. So there are 4 key agencies that you can see: the Center for Epidemic Preparation, Gavi, the Global Vaccine Alliance, Unicef, and World Health Organizations are the key 4 organizations which are part of the Access to COVID-19 Tools Accelerator goals. We are looking at delivering 2 billion plus vaccine doses, which is called as the COVAX, 900 million test kits, 165 million treatments, because wherever we see that the wave of pandemic goes higher and the epidemic rate is higher, we also work towards providing immediate treatments, whether that is in form of providing medicines or providing oxygen. So whatever is required at that point of time, that is also part of the ACT-A COVAX. Ending the acute phase of the pandemic and reopening society is our key focus right now. 141 countries have received more than 300 million vaccine doses, specific to say close to 320 million. And since end of February 2021, when we started working towards it, we are looking at supply of 1.4 billion doses by end of year, and over 2 billion in Q1 of 2022. Variants continue to be a concern, because as we are saying that the virus is mutating in different forms as it's moving across countries, and it continues to be a concern for us. Supply does not yet meet demand, specifically where we had our hub of vaccine production, like in case of India, the pandemic had a really brutal attack on the country in April, and they then had to stop exporting vaccines. So there have been challenges in terms of supply as well, but COVAX facility has been working towards curbing vaccine nationalism so that the richer countries are sharing the vaccine doses that they have in surplus, and also working towards enhancing the number of production sites. So our vaccination targets globally is that 10% of the world should be vaccinated by end of September, 40% by end of 2021, and 70% by mid-2022. Next slide, please. So this graph shows you, sorry. So UNICEF service in support of COVID-19 vaccine procurement and delivery, as you can see, the portfolio of UNICEF is the largest single procurer of vaccines globally. By volume, we procure about 2.5 billion doses, normally delivering to more than 100 countries, reaching about half the world's infants. This is what normally UNICEF does in a year, even irrespective of COVID. We buy and place syringes and cold boxes to ensure that there is cold chain and equipment that is ready. We help countries prepare and roll out vaccine programs. We work with communities, governments, and the private sector on risk communication and community engagement. This is how we tackle vaccine hesitancy and misinformation. Vaccine demand observatory, country by country, to target our approach. We have been working on procurement, on international freight, logistics, and cold chain management, country planning, because the governments in every country plan and give us a detailed planning of what is the need in their country related to the population that is there and related to the population that needs to be prioritized first. According to that, there is a preparedness and readiness plan made, and allocation plan is created for every country for vaccines. Then there is a whole program delivery happening, because UNICEF is the agency that is presence in the largest part of the world. So we work towards community advocacy and engagement, because for communities to understand that there is no misinformation about the vaccines is very important, and they accept them. Immunization supply chains are maintained so that there is vaccines reaching to the hardest reachable areas. There is vaccine safety and surveillance. Cold chain is maintained, because for most of these vaccines, like the Pfizer, we really need to maintain them in sub-zero temperatures. So that's very important. We create points of delivery along with the government, so that there are enhanced points of delivery created in the most remote areas where communities can come and get vaccinated. And then after all of this, it's also very important that the waste that is created out of vaccine is safely disposed. So UNICEF is vaccine agnostic, as we say. So many of the countries do have their bilateral contracts with the vaccines manufacturers. So UNICEF, even though we might not be delivering vaccines in some countries via COVAX, but we are supporting them in a vaccination and providing the other services like country planning and program delivery. So we definitely work multi-lane across the portfolio. Next slide, please. We've also been fighting vaccine hesitancy in a big way. We have been kind of fighting an infodemic, if we would like to say so, in this epidemic. We have created a vaccine demand observatory, country by country analysis, and support is being carried out in that. We do have our social listening mechanisms, where we realized that health workers were increasingly infected with COVID-19 and hence also blamed for community transmission. People started running away from them and labeling them as somebody who were spreading COVID-19. So there were recommendations to initiate a campaign to train health workers so that they have the right gear, they are protecting themselves first, rebuild the trust, and promote their dedication and heroism. So as part of that, there were campaigns run in different countries along with the governments to make sure that we are able to position health workers as the heroes who are helping us combat the epidemic more than anybody else by putting their lives in danger and at the front line. We've also, if I would like to quote you a simple case of Pakistan, where we worked in the community and realized that religious leaders were somebody whose voice made a lot of difference. So they were brought on board, and at the time of namaz on Jummah, that's a Friday namaz that happens, the prayers that are offered, the religious leaders were propagating this, and that advocacy really made a lot of difference. So we've been using different channels, whether that is religious leaders, whether that is building trust on health workers, or the key government leaders to come forward and take vaccine. So all of those mechanisms have been different to different countries, depending on the cultural issues or myths that were prevalent in those contexts. We've been working on combating them. And a trust building We Care campaign to provide PPE equipments, promote appreciation and solidarity using mass and social media has been taking place. Next slide, please. How you can join us to join this race to end the pandemic. First of all, please use your voice to share safe messages about not just vaccines, but social distances, masks, and encourage your own teams to get vaccinated. That is the key thing that we need from each and every individual. Funding is urgently needed to turn these vaccines into vaccinations, help provide testing kits, provide treatment where outbreaks are severe. So we do have right now, today, currently a funding gap of 310 million as of today, even for 2021. And UNICEF does not stop protecting children from the impacts of the pandemic. We carry on with our other key program areas, which is routine immunization, education, healthcare, and protection. So we really look forward to you joining this race along with us. Thank you. And I would now like to call over David to take on.
Thank you, Shweta. Well, good morning, everyone, or at least it's morning here in Boise, Idaho. I'm David Boan, and I'm a member of the Cathedral of the Rockies in Boise, Idaho, where I assist our missions team. I'm also the World Evangelical Alliance representative to the World Health Organization, but I'm here to talk about our church in Boise and how this program started. As Cathedral of the Rockies moved online last year, as many churches had to do in the pandemic, our missions team began to ask, what can we do that engages people beyond contributing money, that actually not only engages people, but builds connections beyond our own borders? Cathedral of the Rockies Missions has a long tradition of serving those in need in our local community. And our missions team wanted to build on that rich history and asking a basic question: what does it mean to be citizens of a global community? The pandemic gave us the opportunity to put that into action by supporting this vaccination effort for the majority world. And that effort is our partnership with Unicef, with United Methodist Abundant Health, with United Methodist Global Ministries, and other programs. So as we were grappling with that, we were connected with my friend and colleague, Christine McMillan, who was working on the Love My Neighbor program in Canada. We invited them to talk with us, and the team was really inspired by their story and how they were engaging the faith community in Canada to support COVAX. The team was inspired by their story, and we are thankful and indebted to Sarah and Christine for that inspiration. Like Love My Neighbor, we reached out to UNICEF, and we have been fortunate that they assigned Alex and Austin to work with us. We're thankful for their help in making this an interfaith effort in particular. We're also fortunate to be connected with the Abundant Health Network, with Emily Crone, and thankful for her help in reaching out beyond Idaho, as well as with Kathleen Griffith and connecting us with Global Ministries. It's the willingness of all of these people to come alongside a local church and become part of an extended team together with our local volunteers that it's made possible to be here today. Which brings me to a question that I'd like to speak to for a moment. Why would a small church in Boise, Idaho do this? Frankly, as we initially talked about it, there were some concerns that it could take away from our local ministry efforts, that people might not be motivated to help people that they don't see. That, after all, many of the beneficiaries of COVAX are rather invisible to us here in Idaho. And further, we could be walking into a political firestorm, especially here in Idaho, which has a very low rate of support for vaccination. Well, our experience has actually eased these concerns. We have found that responding to what is global does not limit what is local, but in fact can strengthen it. Unfortunately, the pandemic is linked to many other impacts on people: hunger, homelessness, mental health, and more. And so as we began to see evidence of things such as the high rate of infection among our own homeless community, a community long supported by our church, the people really began to recognize the connections between these other programs and our efforts to promote vaccine. So as we began to talk about engaging globally, it also became clear how that can be a support to what we're doing locally. So our challenge is really to engage people in the faith community to work together with us. And in doing that, we emphasized four, I'll say, pillars of that commitment. I mean, first of all, as a Christian community, we're called to love our neighbors. This is a great commandment to act with compassion. And compassion means helping to protect people from infection. The Great Commission also calls us to make disciples of nations. That means calling on leaders to act with compassion and demonstrate to other nations that the faith community in the United States cares about what happens beyond our own borders. As Christians and other faith communities, we are called to seek justice, and creating equitable access to vaccine is to correct an injustice. In fact, we're guided by the scripture that says, "But if anyone has the world's goods and sees his brother in need, yet closes his heart against him, how can God's love abide in him?" And finally, our message was also that here, especially in the US, we should recognize the privileges that we have and be willing to pay that forward by donating so that others can also receive the vaccine. So from those four pillars, it should be clear that for us, the money is not the aim, but rather it is the indicator of our effort to engage the faith community. Our focus is on engaging the community to put their faith in action by demonstrating compassion, service, and a desire to create justice for the majority world. If we succeed in this, not only will we have generated money to support vaccinations, but we will have strengthened our local ministry and hopefully strengthen the faith community beyond us. And for that opportunity, we're thankful. And I am thankful for all of you being here today and taking the time to meet with us. And with that, I'll pass on to Amy Weiss of Olam.
Thank you so much, David. My name is Amy Weiss, and I'm the Director of Jewish Communal Engagement and Learning at Olam, which means world in Hebrew, and I'm coming from you live in my home in the DC area. At Olam, we believe in a global Jewish people that supports and partners with vulnerable communities in developing countries in order to foster a more just and compassionate world for all. Olam is a network of over 60 Israeli and Jewish organizations that are committed to serving the most vulnerable non-Jewish populations in the developing world through humanitarian aid, international development, and global service. And this is why we at Olam are supporting the End the Pandemic campaign. Recently, Rabbi Ephraim Mervis, the Chief Rabbi of the United Kingdom and the Commonwealth, said, "The health and well-being of so many depends on the loving kindness and generosity of ordinary people." It is this simple yet profound sentiment that is why Olam is involved in the End the Pandemic campaign and why we are working to mobilize the North American Jewish community to be a part of ending this pandemic. We at Olam believe that it is incumbent upon all of us to show generosity and care to the entire world, especially to those most vulnerable. As David said, it's also time for us to pay it forward. Having received free vaccines and even free boosters in some cases, it's time to give somebody else this extraordinary gift. This past month, the Jewish community celebrated our High Holy Days, during which we restart the yearly cycle of reading of the Torah, what we call the 5 books of Moses, from the beginning. In the book of Breshit, in the book of Genesis, when God creates man, Adam, it says, "And God created man in his image. In the image of God, he created him." In Hebrew, the phrase "made in the image of God" is B'Tselem Elohim. This concept is carried throughout Jewish tradition, and it means that every human being is holy, kadosh, that every person matters, and that every person has a spark of the divine within them. In the ideal sense of this, if we truly believe we are all created in God's image, we have to recognize everyone around us at all times, including those around the world we never met or don't even know. This is our call to ensure the world is vaccinated, that everyone matters, every life is holy, and that everyone quite literally deserves a shot. As it says in a writing from Ethics of Our Fathers, what we call Pirkei Avot, it is not upon us to complete the task, but neither are we allowed to cease from it. The task of vaccinating the world is a large one. May we all play our part to work towards achieving this tremendous goal, because alone our communities can't achieve this, but together we can. I'm wishing all of us success in this extraordinary campaign, and thank all of you for answering the call of humanity in this most extraordinary moment. And I thank Unicef for its heroic efforts. Olam is fully in and committed, and we can't wait to see what we all do together. It's now my honor to introduce Kathleen Griffith, who's a general board member of the United Methodist Global Ministries.
Thank you so much, Amy. Good morning, good afternoon to you all, and warm greetings from our unit, from the leadership of the General Board of Global Ministries. Thank you so much for the invitation to participate in this vital briefing, to be part of this initiative and this movement. My name is Kathleen Griffith, and my work is with the Global Health Unit of the General Board of Global Ministries, which includes the Abundant Health Initiative, which brings to mind the scripture, "I have come that they may have life and have it abundantly." And that is our hope, the outcome, one of the outcomes of vaccination for all. Global Ministries is the mission, development, and humanitarian assistance arm of the United Methodist Church. Our emergency humanitarian assistance unit is well known as UMCOR, the United Methodist Committee on Relief, but we are together in this as one body. This campaign, this initiative is very, very important to us as an organization and to me personally. As the many months of the pandemic have gone by, this vaccine campaign has become indeed more important and personal. Our organization has been and continues to work with partners around the world to inform communities about COVID and the vaccine, to help prevent and manage the infection and address some of the many impacts, such as food insecurity. We are convinced that faith leaders and faith networks play a vital part in communication, in modeling, in reaching out to their neighbors, perhaps as important as health workers. Our particular focus in the Global Health Unit has been our partners in Sub-Saharan Africa, who oversee the multiple networks of United Methodist health facilities, many of them beyond the end of the road, and all of them engaged with communities. Strengthening health systems and preparing facilities and communities for immunization has been among our key activities. COVID has our attention, but pregnant women still need a safe delivery. Children under 5 still need immunizations, food, and ongoing health care. Malaria is alive and well. Community members with HIV, tuberculosis, diabetes, and hypertension still need access to treatment. And then there are the parallel and integrated social, educational, and economic hardships. Together, respectful listening, COVID myth-busting, awareness, and vaccines have become and continue to be urgent interventions. With our partners in vaccine hesitancy and developed communication guidelines and strategies to help communities, including women who are so powerful, to help communities to promote guidelines and strategies to help communities protect themselves from this disease. This work forms part of my radical hope and my faith that we will get through this despite the communal fear, the stigma, and the grief. Yes, we've signed on to this campaign. We've signed on to the campaign through a fundraising strategy we have in Global Ministries called the Advance. This opportunity to raise funds for the equitable distribution of vaccines is an essential part of my radical hope. The pandemic has shone a light on what we already knew about fragile health systems and inequities, but here is a chance to respond. We are delighted to be partnering with Cathedral of the Rockies and with Unicef to create a channel of giving for United Methodists and all who are interested to support Unicef in this undertaking. Thank you. Thank you so much for the partnership. No one can do it alone. You have already shown radical generosity, and I pray that enthusiasm for this initiative, this campaign, and for the advance from Global Ministries will spread faster than COVID. Just a detail about this mechanism. The advance, I'm so sorry, the advance collects funds donated online or by check, and 100% of those funds will go to this initiative directly to UNICEF for the equitable distribution of vaccines. This interfaith movement to end the pandemic is a radical intervention and a radical understanding that the pandemic will only be over when it's over for everyone. Thank you. And I'd like to introduce and hand over to César from the Mennonite World Conference. Thank you.
Good morning from my home office in Canada. It is a privilege for me to share with you, and thank you for this opportunity. My name is Cesar Garcia. I am from Colombia, and I have been working with Mennonite World Conference as General Secretary during the last 10 years. Mennonite World Conference is the global body that brings together churches in the Anabaptist Mennonite tradition. And again, it is a privilege for me to have this opportunity of sharing with you today. As a Colombian, I am familiar with the strategies used to cope with crisis. In a country with a daily news diet of towns destroyed by the armed conflict, bombs exploding in cities, and frequent kidnappings, we have learned how to ignore that reality and move on with our lives until a relative or a close friend becomes one of the victims. Now, despite the growing impact of COVID-19, we are tempted to avoid this reality, and it is understandable. News and media speak about the virus all the time. Online conversations raise the topic, and financial consequences make this crisis something we want to escape from. If you are like me, you may feel tired of this new, never-ending crisis. However, escapism is not what the church perceives as its call in the face of suffering. God invites us to face the crisis and, in compassion, walk with those who suffer. That was how the early church responded when they faced the pandemics of their time. In the midst of confusion, they offered hope, choosing empathy over self-interest, faith over fear, pastoral care over isolation. Their response was one of compassion. The impact of COVID-19 has been immense, even in countries that have resources and health infrastructure. Yet governments in many of these countries have the capacity to offer subsidies, credits, and unemployment insurance to those affected by the financial crisis. Considering how great an impact the crisis has made in these well-resourced countries, I cannot imagine what the impact is in the global south. The spread of COVID-19 through countries already devastated by armed conflict, internal displacement, and a lack of health infrastructure and financial capacity may push many of them close to a generalized annihilation. In those contexts, many congregations live and work as frontline responders to crisis. Their work includes providing pastoral care and counseling to the fearful, the sick, and the dying, giving medical care, livelihood support, and similar practical actions. These churches need the support of a global community, of a global church. The Global South requires a coordinated strategy that potentializes the support in a sustainable way. COVID-19 has not borders. The only way to end this pandemic is with global cooperation. The only valid response from a global church is one of interdependent compassion. Mennonite World Conference wants to respond today as our forebears of the early church did. And that is why we are committed to this campaign. And with gratitude, we support the effort that Unicef and many others are doing to end the pandemic. And with these words, I want to introduce to you Asma Ahad, Director of Halal Market Development of Islamic Food and Nutrition Council of America.
Assalamu alaikum, peace be unto you, and good morning from the Islamic Food and Nutrition Council of America. I'm talking to you from our headquarters in Des Plaines, Illinois. The Islamic Food and Nutrition Council of America is committed to working in partnership with UNICEF to address concerns around the pandemic, as well as help drive vaccines into communities that might otherwise be hesitant or not have access to them. A little bit about our organization. Before the terms food insecurity and health insecurity were even mainstream ideas, the Islamic Food and Nutrition Council of America, also known as IFANCA, made it its mission to address these concerns. Many of you may have heard of us as an organization that is one of the world's leading halal certifiers, but our purpose and our mission far exceeds that. Founded in 1982, IFANCA's core mission is to address the needs of halal consumers. This includes enabling access to the right products so halal consumers can be food and health secure while simultaneously preserving their core religious values. Our organization is made up of esteemed religious scholars and scientific experts. We are global thought leaders on halal. Earlier, you heard Shweta make some remarks about Pakistan and vaccine hesitancy in Pakistan, and she talked about how there were religious concerns and how they worked with the religious community in Pakistan. That is a tremendous effort on UNICEF's part and real groundbreaking work. But what we're aiming to do in our partnership with UNICEF is to not only provide them the financial support to address concerns, to address the access and availability of vaccines, but it's also to address the concerns of halal consumers around the world who have valid questions about vaccinations and the access to acceptable healthcare in according to their religious beliefs. So as we're looking to build our relationship with UNICEF over the next 5 years, we're looking to not only be financial partners, but also thought partners and community partners. And really, we're hoping to accomplish much, hopefully beyond what we're accomplishing during COVID-19 and delivering the vaccines to everybody, is to have an open road to delivering vaccines in general to the global population. And really, we're looking forward to building this relationship further and bringing our whole community with us. Thank you so much, UNICEF, for giving us this opportunity, and we look forward to building a great relationship with you and all of your community, and we look forward to bringing our community to the table as well.
Thank you, Asma, and thank you to all of our partners that spoke today. We wouldn't be here if it wasn't for your generous support. So thank you very much. I saw that some of you posted questions on the chat throughout the presentation. We want to spend the next 10 minutes addressing any kind of question or concern that you may have. I want to thank my colleague Austin that's been on live there answering those questions, and David as well. Please type your questions in the chat or in the Q&A button. To get us started and give you time to gather any thoughts that you may have, there are some questions that are often asked about this campaign. For example, where can I learn more about progress on vaccine distribution? You can visit the COVID-19 vaccine market dashboard to see regular updates on vaccine deliveries, doses allocated, and more. In addition, updates, impact stories, and information about UNICEF's vaccine deliveries are regularly posted on UNICEF USA's Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram pages, as well as our website. Thank you, Austin, for posting that link. I also want to mention, how are these funds collected? You can visit the Interfaith Movement website to make a donation today, and be sure to select your affiliation in the drop-down list. There is also a question about, how does UNICEF determine where to send out the vaccines? The World Health Organization determines the vaccine locations, which is transmitted to UNICEF by the Office of the COVAX Facility with the Gavi Alliance. UNICEF is guided by allocations made by the COVAX Facility to ensure doses are delivered as quickly as possible to participating countries, as long as they are ready to receive vaccines and have completed a series of steps to ensure them. We've also get a question often asked about vaccines and how they're transported. Vaccines can be transported and accepted at ports of entry. Who carries out the vaccination process in local communities, and where? UNICEF works with local governments and partners to ensure we reach the most vulnerable in the hardest to reach places. You can learn more about UNICEF's community health programs on our website. We have a question for Shweta. What challenges does UNICEF continue to face with the vaccine distribution, and what are UNICEF's program priorities through Act A? Shweta?
Yeah, thank you, Alex, and thanks for this question as well. So the challenges that UNICEF faces, I think we begin from the fact that Act A overall has been facing challenges that we have not been able to go as planned. The plan was to be able to vaccinate, at least 20 or 30% of the world by end of December 2021, but due to lack of supply of vaccines, we couldn't do it. So that is the biggest challenge. Secondly is then it comes to the fact that how we reach the hardest to be reached areas. So there are many of the places where it is more challenging to carry the vaccines which have to be preserved in sub-zero temperatures. So initially, UNICEF was looking at getting larger doses of AstraZeneca vaccine from India production site, where the temperatures that were needed for cold chain were higher and was easier to transport. Since that didn't happen, we had to take on other vaccines, which is like Pfizer, Moderna, which have to be carried in sub-zero temperatures. So there were additional equipments needed. There was additional training needed for staff to be able to carry those out, and also additional funding needed for those kind of equipments. Thirdly, it's also about the fact when there is a major breakout in a place where we are wanting to vaccinate. So then that is not able to be held as per schedule. And also some of the countries where production was happening have been holding on production because of this third or fourth wave of COVID coming and impacting the countries in an adverse manner. And beyond that, yes, we do also encounter a lot of vaccine hesitancy issues where people are not willing to get vaccinated. There are myths around it where health workers are not seen in positive light, as I talked about it. So we are also working on our communication campaigns to be able to make this through. And last, not the least, that our normal programs for children are getting impacted because of the fact that people are not sending children to school, they are not coming for regular immunization schedules, and also priority happening to COVID immunization schedules. Many of the key programs for children are getting impacted. And there are many children, specifically in difficult circumstances, if we look at the humanitarian settings and refugees, where there have been issues of key basic of issues of nutrition, immunization, also not being catered to. Thank you.
Thank you, Shweta. We have a question for David. For those who want to engage congregations in the campaign, what is the call to action to the average community member? And what can we do as the leader of an organization?
Thank you, Alex. I'm trying to get unmuted there. There we go. I am going to put my key speaking points into the response box in a moment, but let me just speak to that briefly. I think it's important to say to people that there's a variety of ways they can be involved. For example, support for vaccination grows when there's a peer group that says to people, this is why we should be doing this. And so just equipping people to have conversations can be one way that a church can be involved. Provide them with speaking points, Q&As, and so on. The other way is to also speak in terms of becoming an advocate, to speak to your representatives in government that they support COVAX. You can, of course, engage people in contributing financially, and especially, as we've said, for those who have been vaccinated, to consider how they can pay it forward. So I think it's important that we say to people that there's many ways to participate beyond writing a check. And doing so, I think, makes it more meaningful and also creates a sense that it's not just individuals privately contributing some money, but we as a faith community are engaged together in a variety of ways to support this initiative. And the rationale for that go to some of those points that I mentioned earlier, and I will paste that into the response box now. Yeah, but thank you for your question.
Thank you, David. Any other questions? There's one question that we usually get about the campaign, and it's about the vaccine hesitancy. How does UNICEF plan on addressing vaccine hesitancy in low-income countries that desperately need high immunization rates? There's a strong engagement with communities and health workers in raising awareness, and building trust is a key priority to ensure that COVID-19 vaccines are effectively deployed. UNICEF is working on the ground in addressing misinformation in various countries around the world. An example that comes to my mind is South Africa, where UNICEF is supporting the National Vaccine Communication Plan, working with a range of organizations on monitoring and tackling misinformation and building trust for the COVID-19 vaccine. So how does UNICEF do that? Well, it's engaging at the local level with health workers and reaching communities with a multimedia truck. The key tactic of the truck was to film short stories with people from the local community about their experiences with COVID-19, which were then played back on the truck screens. And that is something that relates to Cesar's own personal testimony of how seeing COVID-19 affecting your neighbors mobilizes people to act. Any other questions? We have a question about UNICEF strengthening health systems of countries. Is there a plan underway? In addition to leading the procurement and supply of COVID-19 vaccine, UNICEF, together with the WHO and other partners, is co-leading global efforts to ensure countries are ready to introduce and deploy the vaccine as soon as it becomes available. This includes helping countries to strengthen health systems by improving cold chains and pre-positioning supplies to help administer vaccines once they arrive. UNICEF is currently working with countries to map out the types of technologies best suited to each locale and collaborating with partners to add new infrastructure and strengthen existing systems where needed. I have a question here. Is there a way to access the videos from South Africa? Linda, thank you for that question. We will certainly get back to you and look for that video because it is very moving. And for any questions that might not have been addressed, please send them over after the event. We'd love to address them. With that, I'd like to hand it over to Renee to close the event.
Excellent. Thank you so very much, Alex, specifically for your leadership. It is to be commended, and I would be remiss if I did not acknowledge our entire Global Cause Partnership team for your commitments and efforts in working so collaboratively with all of our partners. I also would like to thank Shweta so very much for your informative presentations and for following up with our providing us answers to our Q&A portion. And again, I am sure everyone today will join me in saying a special thanks to our speakers, David, Amy, Kathleen, Cesar, and Asma. We were moved by your remarks. As David mentioned, a $1 million goal inspires us to work together because of its significant impact. $1 million could literally transport 25 million doses of vaccines within a low-income country. $1 million can fund 100,000 diagnostic kits to help increase the tracking of new infections. And $1 million allows Unicef to get us closer to ending the pandemic. But the need is great. And we have a goal to distribute at least 2 billion vaccines by the first quarter of 2022. And we know today that for every person that is unvaccinated, it's an opportunity for this virus to spread further. The pandemic won't be over until everyone is vaccinated. It's imperative to get children back to school around the world, continue our routine vaccinations against diseases such as the measles, and I'm sure everyone heard this morning in regards to the new vaccine for malaria from the World Health Organization, and further protect children's overall well-being. Ending the pandemic will help us restart the world for children, and they're the ones that we are here to serve. And we must unite. All of us share a commitment to equity and a mission to embrace and uplift our neighbors. That's why I would like to ask you to join the Interfaith Movement and help us get closer to that $1 million goal. Every dollar counts in the fight to end the pandemic. Every partner, every friend, every donor who joins us is another ally in the effort to turn the tide against COVID-19. And I also ask for your support as we seek to truly embody this interfaith spirit by reaching out to others to join us so we can build a diverse movement. We need all hands on deck. This is an all hands on deck approach in this holistic initiative to vaccinate the world. And again, on behalf of my colleagues, on behalf of all of our speakers, and on behalf of all of the children that we serve, I want to say thank you so very much for your support, and thank you for joining us today.